Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has warned any U.S. military action in Iran will be, quote, met with irreparable harm. Khamenei's warning comes a day after President Trump demanded Iran's unconditional surrender. Trump also directly threatened Khamenei by writing on Truth Social, "The U.S. knows exactly where he is," adding, quote, "We are not going to take him out, at least not for now," unquote. Multiple reports indicate Trump is moving closer to ordering U.S. airstrikes on Iran after months of supporting negotiations. On Tuesday, Trump, after leaving the G7 summit early, dismissed findings by his own intelligence agencies on Iran. In March, the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, told lawmakers the intelligence community, quote, continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, unquote. On Tuesday, Trump dismissed Gabbard's testimony, saying, quote, "I don't care what she said," unquote. This all comes as Israel continues to attack Iran for a sixth day, forcing thousands of people to flee Tehran. More than 50 Israeli warplanes struck targets inside Iran in the early hours of today. Iran responded by firing ballistic missiles and launching drones at Israel. According to one count, Israeli strikes since Friday have killed at least 585 people across Iran and wounded over 1,300. Iranian strikes on Israel have killed at least 23 people and injured more than 630. On Capitol Hill, Democratic Senator Tim Kaine called on his colleagues to support his war powers resolution to prevent a U.S. war with Iran.
I happen to believe that the United States engaging in a war against Iran, a third war in the Middle East since 2001, would be a catastrophic blunder for this country.
Meanwhile, there's a growing split within Trump's MAGA coalition over the prospect of a U.S. attack on Iran. Conservative TV host Tucker Carlson has railed against what he calls warmongers within the Republican Party. On Tuesday, video went viral of him interviewing the hawkish Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz.
If you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay, this is
no,
cute.
It's not
okay.
even. You don't know anything about Iran, so
okay,
actually
I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who
don't know anything about the country.
In Gaza, the death toll from an Israeli attack on aid seekers in Khan Yunis on Tuesday has reached 70. Hundreds of Palestinians were also wounded after Israeli forces used tanks, drones, and machine guns to fire on crowds who'd gathered hoping to receive bags of flour. The Nasser medical complex was overwhelmed with victims. This is Dr. Mark Brunner, a doctor from Oregon who's volunteering at Nasser Medical Complex.
Every time we know that there's a few so-called food distribution, we know that there's going to be annihilation. And, you know, the first couple of days we were seeing a lot of isolated injuries, head or chest or abdomen. But today it's reported that tanks have been used at the food distribution centers, which makes sense because we're seeing multi-trauma. We're seeing head, neck, chest, abdomen, extremities, many, many deaths. And it just doesn't have to be this way. You know, this is something that's just got to stop.
In Geneva, a group of UN experts told the UN Human Rights Council Israel is committing war crimes and the crime against humanity of extermination. This is former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Navi Pillay.
These attacks were part of a widespread and relentless assault against the Palestinian people, in which Israeli forces have committed war crimes, including directing attacks against civilians and willful killing, and the crime against humanity of extermination. The goal of the Israeli government is abundantly clear: the destruction of life in Gaza.
Here in New York, ICE agents arrested New York City Controller Brad Lander Tuesday as he was escorting a man at an immigration courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Lander, who is running for mayor, was handcuffed and detained by agents after he demanded to see a judicial warrant as agents tried to detain the man he was accompanying.
Step back. You don't have authority. You don't have authority to arrest U.S. citizens. Sir, you don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. You don't have the, I'm not obstructing. I'm standing right here in the hallway. I asked to see the judicial warrant. By asking for a judicial warrant? You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens asking for a judicial warrant.
Brad Lander was held for several hours in the latest confrontation between Democratic politicians and federal immigration agents. Other mayoral candidates denounced Lander's arrest. New York State Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani wrote, "This is fascism." And former Governor Andrew Cuomo said the arrest is an example of the, quote, extreme thuggery of Trump's ICE out of control. City Controller Brad Lander will join us later in the hour. On Capitol Hill, California, Democratic Senator Alex Padilla took to the Senate floor Tuesday to recount how federal agents shoved him into a hallway floor and handcuffed him last week when he attempted to ask a question during a press conference held by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem.
I was pushed and pulled, struggled to maintain my balance. I was forced to the ground, first on my knees, and then flat on my chest. And as I was handcuffed and marched down a hallway, if that is what the administration is willing to do to a United States senator for having the authority to simply ask a question, imagine what they'll do to any American who dares to speak up.
ICE agents are continuing to carry out raids around Los Angeles. On Wednesday, protests broke out in Pico Rivera after masked armed agents raided multiple locations in the city, including a Walmart. They detained a number of people, including at least one U.S. citizen. Video showed ICE agents cocking assault rifles and pointing them at civilians. 10 Democratic lawmakers are seeking more information about how the tech company Palunteer is helping the Trump administration build what the lawmakers described as a government-wide searchable mega database that connects sensitive tax and other government data. In a letter to Palunteer CEO Alex Karp, the lawmakers described the database as a, quote, surveillance nightmare that, quote, will make it significantly easier for Donald Trump's administration to spy on and target his growing list of enemies and other Americans, unquote. A federal judge in Boston's ruled the Trump administration must restore more than $1 billion in grants cut by the National Institutes of Health as part of a White House effort to end research linked to diversity, equity, or inclusion, or gender ideology. U.S. District Judge William Young, who was appointed by President Reagan, said, quote, this represents racial discrimination and discrimination against America's LGBTQ community. Young went on to say, quote, I've sat on this bench now for 40 years. I've never seen government racial discrimination like this, the judge said. On Capitol Hill, Senate Republicans are pushing for sweeping cuts to Medicaid and to stricter work requirements for Medicaid recipients. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer warned the Republican Senate proposal will be deeper and more devastating than the cuts already by the House. He wrote online, quote, this could lead to even more than the 16 million people expected to lose health insurance and the hundreds of hospitals and health centers facing higher risk of closure. CNN reports the Environmental Protection Agency has directed staff overseeing the states in the Midwest to stop enforcing violations by the fossil fuel industry. The move is in line with EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin's pledge to orchestrate the largest deregulation action in U.S. history. EPA staff overseeing southern states, including Texas, Louisiana, and New Mexico, have also effectively halted enforcement actions against polluting companies. In Memphis, Tennessee, the NAACP has announced plans to sue Elon Musk's artificial intelligence firm xAI for violating the Clean Air Act by running a massive data center near a historically black neighborhood without legal permits. Musk's facility runs on 35 methane gas-powered turbine generators, which emit significant amounts of nitrogen oxide and other toxic chemicals. NAACP President Derek Johnson said, quote, "We cannot afford to normalize this kind of environmental injustice, where billion-dollar companies set up polluting operations in black neighborhoods without any permits and think they'll get away with it because the people don't have the power to fight back," unquote. To see our coverage of this issue, go to democracynow.org. In other environmental news, a new report has revealed the world's largest banks committed nearly $900 billion last year to finance coal, oil, and gas projects. That's a 23% increase over the previous year. Altogether, the world's largest 65 banks have committed $7.9 trillion to the fossil fuel industry since the Paris climate deal was reached a decade ago. In Georgia, a woman who was declared brain dead nearly 4 months ago has given birth to a baby boy via emergency C-section. Doctors had kept the mother, Adriana Smith, on life support against the wishes of her distraught family. Her body was kept on life support due to the state's near-total abortion ban. Adriana Smith's mother has described the months-long ordeal as torture. Adriana was scheduled to be taken off life support Tuesday. And Saudi Arabia has executed the prominent journalist Turki Al-Jasser, who was arrested in 2018 and convicted on what press freedom advocates say are trumped-up charges. The Committee to Protect Journalists said, quote, "The international community's failure to deliver justice for Jamal Khashoggi did not just betray one journalist. It emboldened de facto ruler Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to continue his persecution of the press," unquote. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now!'s Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.